The Wellness Show, episode 179.
Welcome to The Wellness Show, a podcast on health and wealth. I'm your host, Tyson Bannigan, the founder of the Extraordinary Healing Arts Academy. Join me as we get the latest insight, tips, and strategies from wellness providers, coaches, and successful, heart-centered entrepreneurs, and much, much more.
Welcome to the Wellness Show, and we're live for the second time around. We had a few technical problems, but guess what? We're up and running, even in the midst of Mercury retrograde. And we're here once again with Michael O'Connor. This is the Wellness Show. I'm your host, Tyson Bannigan, and the show today is on the astrological forecast for 2018. Lots happening. Mercury retrograde, new moon, new beginning. So, Michael, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Tyson. Great to be here. Thank you. So, yeah, this is exciting. I mean, looking at 2017, you think, well, that was a pretty exciting year. We're just finishing here with the U.S. president and all of his antics and attention-seeking behaviors. That was, its own launch. It makes almost like, the first year, like numerologically, astrology and numerology work closely together. It can almost even be described that in its own way, astrology is the outcropping of numerology, believe it or not. It's the first code system. So they're really brother and sister, you could say. And the numerology is that 2017 equals 1 when you add the numbers straight across, 2 plus 0 plus 1 plus 7 equals 10, 1 plus 0 equals 1. That's how it works. It's called universal 1 year. And it was what I call blast off year. Well, 2018 is an 11 year. An 11 year is quite interesting because it's a master number. Since we entered the new millennium, there's an 11 year every 9 years. It's very interesting, very apropos, because 11 as a master number can be described also as the number of metaphysics. It's the number of high creativity. It can be described also as the number of, I call a number to master. So when we say it's a master number, okay, great. It kind of is a compliment if you have an 11 in your numerology. But if you think of it as a number to master, you go, oh, that's a little different, because you have something to overcome, something to master. And 11 is very creative in its highest expression, very metaphysical, very right-left brain. Just like the symbol of Gemini, it's like it's like a Gemini theme. 11 is very Gemini-like. And in that respect, we can talk about right-left brain. We can talk about perception, interpretation. Gemini classically is a very creative sign, make no mistake of that. Creative intelligence is the way to describe it, and creative intelligence is required for metaphysics. On the other hand, negatively, it's like a sword that cuts both ways, 11. It's known by one particular numerologist as double self-confidence, double self-doubt. So now, the main point I'm making here is 2018 is the second 11 year of the new millennium. Prior to that, in the 1900s, there was only one 11 year, 1901. And that's interesting that that occurred. So there was no other 11 year. But in the new millennium, we're having them every 9 years, and that'll happen for many, many years to come. So we're having this repeating 11 year. Now, the first 11 year of the new millennium, guess what? It was 2009. Just so happens that's the year that Barack Obama was signed in as president. He won the presidency in 2008, which equals a 1 year, right? So it was that blast off moment, a whole new reality. We have this whole new presidency, etc. But 2009 was when it began, and that was the 11 year. So 2018 is the next 11 year of the new millennium, and it's a very powerful master number year. That's the basic thing to understand. The other piece I just wanted to add quickly was where 2017, the 1 year, was a blast off. 2018 is the year where we clear the atmosphere. And that's the tough part. Now, yeah, so metaphorically it works. So we should be on the lookout for that rather dramatic year. Now, once again, 2017 was so darn dramatic that you think to yourself, oh God, is it going to get more dramatic? In some respects, it is. Now, astrologically, we can start with two major planetary ingresses that started in 2017, but which will have their larger time starting in 2018. And that's Jupiter in Scorpio and Saturn in Capricorn. In astrology, there's, you could say the Sun, Mercury, Venus, Earth, Moon, and even Mars are known as the personal planets. Jupiter, Saturn are known as the social planets. Uranus, Neptune, Pluto are called the transsocial planets. In between Saturn and Uranus is Chiron. Chiron plays a special role. I'll get back to Chiron. It's really important for this year, 2018. So Jupiter and Saturn, the social planets, have both entered new signs within just over 2 months of each other. That's quite close, especially because Saturn only enters a new sign every 2.5 to 3 years. So to have them, this is significant. What's also important about those social planets, Jupiter and Saturn, is that they're both in the power signs. Okay, when you say the power signs, all signs have their power, their strength. But when it comes to raw power, and the aspiration for power, which can be described as your worldly power or money power, the two signs that stand out the most strongly of all the zodiac are Scorpio and Capricorn. Aries is powerful for pioneering. Leo is powerful for charismatic leadership, especially in the performing arts. So Leo, it can be a leader, but is not as focused on hard realities like Capricorn. Capricorn's all about tradition and security. It's very much linked to prominence in the world. And if you were looking at a mountain peak, the high reaches of it are Capricorn-like, symbolic, because it's rugged, it's lofty, it's difficult to attain, and so forth. Now, so the two social planets in the power signs tells us a basic message. We are entering a power time. We could say a powerful time, but we can also say a time of power where those with Jupiter in Scorpio, it increases the Scorpio theme. So we can talk about Scorpio in different ways. It's about power in different forms, but Scorpio is also linked to transformation and death and rebirth. It's in the year cycle. Scorpio time is that dark time of November, late October, November, where all the leaves are falling off the trees and the season's changing. It's like that ending of what was. Everything gets stripped away. It's very scorpionic. So Jupiter, whatever it touches, it expands. So we're already seeing a stripping away. I'll give you an example. Although what I'm about to tell you began earlier and is connected to the Uranus-Pluto conjunction, which was big back in 2011, 12, 13, all the way up to 2016, Uranus, Pluto were doing a dance for the long time. And I was talking about it for some time. And I was saying, that's all about the gender revolution is linked to that aspect. So we're having, in the backdrop of everything, we're having this gender revolution. Jupiter now, having entered Scorpio, and again, it increases whatever it touches, Jupiter. It expands it, it maximizes, it increases, it turns up the volume. In Scorpio, it's a stripping away theme. Look at how many powerful people have fallen due to that gender revolution. So you see, this is an example of how cycles overlap. So if you want to look at 2018, for example, you certainly can, but in order to get the big picture, you have to look at the big picture context. You have to step back at least a little. We could step back further, but we can talk about things like the age of Aquarius and stuff like that. You can get into big cycles, but we're not going to do that. Except, okay, we talk about this as being the dawning of the age of Aquarius, and that it's a revolutionary age, an information war age. And so we can get into that, and we see that going on. But more to the point, the Uranus-Pluto square and that cycle, which began back in 1965, but in astrology, when you think that far back, it's not as far back as it seems, and that cycle ends in 2104. That 140-year period will be one during which humanity will be challenged to lay claim to an understanding that we, as a human family, are equal in our genders. And so this is a revolution that's going to touch every culture in the world. So when you want to look at the world stage and say, what's going on? What's really happening? Well, there's a lot of things, of course. But one of the bigger things, it so happens, on the game board is that, as we know, as we've been seeing for decades even, is women are gaining more power, authority, prominence. Okay? That has caused reactions. Among those, for example, one could argue ISIS, or ISIL, if you like. ISIS, that represents a very male dominant mindset. The men will rule, right? So whatever else their political and economic agendas are, they want to resurrect the past. That's not going to happen, So they can try, but they'll have to enslave all of humanity to win. It's not going to work too well. So Jupiter in Scorpio, the sign of death and rebirth, but also, it so happens, the sign of sexuality. So Jupiter in Scorpio is going to increase the intensity of the stripping away of things. On one hand, so there's many levels to a planet in a sign, but that's the big one. And we're seeing it with the fall of rather major players. And they're all networked. If you get back there, this whole, sexual inappropriateness. I'm not going to go into details. Everybody knows the details. It's the exploitation, abuse of power, etc. So we're seeing that. Okay, it's a glimpse at Jupiter in Scorpio. Just know that it started in October of 2017 and continues in Scorpio until November of 2018. During that period, we should see a progressive process of the stripping away of what was happening on a variety of levels. And it's just gotten started. So there's much more to come. Who will experience this? For some, by the way, whenever we talk about the planets in the forecast for the year, it's important to understand that it's a generic weather forecast. In other words, all the planetary cycles, to really be understood on a more individual level, you have to apply them to the individual. Every country in what's called mundane astrology, the country is seen as a person. It has its own astrology chart. It can have more than one, but has usually one or two main charts. Every province has an astrology chart. Every state, every city, every company. So it's very, very important to understand that while it's holes within holes, meaning the country is the bigger, then there's the province or state, then there's the cities, then there's the institutions, generally speaking, that how they'll be affected by the transits is what astrology is all about. So we can't touch on all of that with the forecast. We can just talk generally, and that's where horoscopes come in. They talk about each sign, kind of providing a general. I did and do write a yearly horoscope, so that will be available soon. I'll be sending it out to my subscribers and so forth. So if people want to get that, they can go to my website, sunstarastrology.com, and subscribe, and they'll get that. And along with this recording and other bits and pieces that I'll add in my newsletter, okay? The main point is, if you want to know more personally what's going on, the horoscope's the next stage. But if you want to really know what's going on, you have to get your own astrology chart looked at. Just to be clear, because it's generic until then. But the generic reality in the other end of the scale affects us all. Saturn we have a glimpse of Jupiter in Scorpio. Saturn in Capricorn represents this new level of traditional authority. So it's like the tide coming in, the waves come in, but the waves go out again. It comes in, goes out. So it's like a 3 steps forward, 2 steps back process. There is reason to say that Saturn in Capricorn will be a reaction to the revolutionary momentum of things over the past number of years. It will be a return to tradition. We want to get back to what we knew. We want to get back to what was measurable. We want to get back to, feeling like we're feeling more secure with the familiar. Okay, so it can be Saturn in Capricorn can be symbolized as like a daddy knows best. It's the father patriarchal, or at least the parental attitude of, it's time for all you newbies to sit down, and the old guard, the old command, the old authority, what could be described in one respect as the long-standing old guard comes in and says, enough, enough's enough. So I think we're going to see a return for a while of that. We're going to see more of an appeal and a natural inclination to a return to tradition. It could, on the other hand, and I'll say more about that, increase governmental power.
Yeah, I was just going to say, isn't that going to be a bit chaotic?
Well, it's in a way, see, it's not saying it'll be pretty or easy, that the old guard will try and take back some of its power, some of its old authority. I was hearing recently where I was reading an article where it was written in a few different places how there's certain people out there suggesting that social media has reached its peak and now it's going to go into a decline. That would be an echo of a Saturn in Capricorn attitude. I doubt that's going to happen myself. I just don't think that's going to happen, but it's almost like that's wishful thinking, you might say. So the chaos factors in that. So by the way, let's back up a bit. Jupiter and Saturn, the social planets, entering new signs already as of mid-October for Jupiter, and Saturn just a couple of days ago on the 19th or the 20th in the Eastern time zones. Okay, so Saturn entered Capricorn and will be there for over 2.5 years, but less than 3. And it'll be a powerful cycle of an assertion of governmental power and tradition and the old guard attitude, resurrecting what will become more popular. Different people have different opinions about that, of course, but generally we'll see that. Now, other planets are also changing signs. So the big message for 2018 is, even though Jupiter entered in 2017, it's at the end of 2017. And even though Saturn entered Capricorn, it's at the end of 2017. So the larger thrust of their assertion will unfold in 2018. Also, in the spring, April, Chiron, as I mentioned earlier, what's called the bridge planet, the wounded healer, which links Saturn with the social planets, Jupiter, Saturn with the trans-social planets, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, it's considered a link or a bridge. And there's a whole story behind that, which I'll briefly explain in a moment. But most importantly, Chiron is about to enter its own next sign of Aries. Anytime a planet enters Aries, we say it's beginning a new round of the natural zodiac. Well, okay, so Aries is the first sign of the zodiac. So if any planet enters Aries, it represents its own unique perspective of it being a new cycle. Okay, so Chiron entering Aries represents a whole new beginning to the Chiron theme. Aries, in its most basic positive sense, can be described as authentic self-expression. Okay, authentic self-expression is a theme that Chiron, the wounded healer, is going to address. So it's going to, in effect, push us collectively, individually and collectively, to ascertain what constitutes and thereby lay claim to or express ourselves authentically. What does that mean? That's the question. What does that mean?
Yeah, what does that mean with regard to being a wounded warrior? Those two seem to be juxtaposed.
No, Chiron's a wounded healer. Yeah. I see what you're saying. You're already making the association of Aries. Chiron in Aries is quite charismatic. Aries brings fire and energy to anything, pretty much. It can, in some respects, not be appropriate, and timing can be bad, and it can be aggressive. But Chiron there is quite good. It represents a new thrust, a pioneering initiative, a fresh start, etc. So basically, Chiron in Aries will produce the effect of, once again, an ignition. Aries, I like to use the term ignition for Aries, like a spark plug. It ignites this theme of the healing of our authenticity. Personally, I've seen that linked to other planetary activity of late, but I'll get back to that in just a moment. The next major planet to consider that's changing a sign in 2018 is Uranus. Now, what's really interesting about that, Uranus will be entering Taurus. Uranus entered Aries back in 2011. When it did, that's when Isis rose very strongly, at least into more prominence. And there's a lot of, we can go back, but we'll keep it simple. Uranus in Aries has, coincided with kind of an increase in technological mobility. It was already existing, so it could be seen as subtle, but it awakened a new sort of momentum. I mean, you know what it mostly is? It's ironic to say this because a lot of it is the robotics, I think, that it's there, it's sitting there. Aries blazes a trail, but Taurus establishes what it blazed. So in other words, if you entered new territory in Aries fashion, let's say you landed on the island, okay? And okay, everybody off the boats, bush, we're going through the bush, we're cutting. We find a place at some point which is the perfect spot to build the fortress. Taurus says, okay, now let's build the fortress. That would be the Taurus phase of the cycle. Uranus entering Taurus starting in April 2018 will be the establishment of the new order. And it will bring, I think what we're going to see is a lot of those robotics and computers starting to make their presence more known. Because, we've been hearing about it, right? On the airwaves, oh, it's coming. Elon Musk saying, get ready, right? Because once these computers and robotics start to kick in the marketplace, it'll be a do or die factor in a lot of ways. Other industry will have to compete. It'll just be out competed. It's a fiscal thing, right? And you know what the hazard of that is, of course, is if you have robotics taking the place of humans doing jobs, you end up in a problem. That problem is nothing short of a massive earthquake in, so to speak, in the economy. Because if you have less people working, you have less people buying. If you have less people buying, so it's hard to, I can't say in clear certain terms what I think will happen, but I think that Uranus in Taurus is very much like a bulldozer. It is a force to reckon with. In Aries, it's very pioneering and full of genius and full of brave new world consciousness. But in Taurus, it says, now we'll build the foundation. Now we'll kind of, it's like, in a war, the troops come in and the tanks follow behind, kind of thing.
It sounds like there's a
Pardon me?
momentum that can stop.
Well, it is always unstoppable. The very motion of the planets represents the forces, symbolically, and it's sort of like in the solar system, the planets are all moving. It's like a machine, and the force of it is always forward, even though there's retrograde moments of course, within it all, based on the perception of planets appearing to go backwards, etc. But they don't, in fact, and that isn't enough to suggest that the whole thing isn't, in its own way, moving on, at least moving on to new developments all the time. So it's not just some circumstantial social thing strictly. It's the forces, what would be traditionally called the gods, the archetypes, the forces of nature at play. It's not merely on Earth and circumstantial, would be the idea. So here, Jupiter, Saturn, Chiron, and Uranus changing new signs is significant because they all, in the astronomical order, are consecutive. It goes Jupiter, Saturn, Chiron, Uranus, just like that. And then there's Neptune, Pluto over there, and prior to Jupiter is Mars, Earth, Moon, Venus, Mercury, Sun. So those four are a group of their own. So they entering new signs represents a major shift. It's like it's almost like, not to use excessively a metaphor of military, but it's like the Army, the Marines, the Air Force, and whatever other force would be in there. I don't know what the other would be, ground-to-air missiles, etc. It would be four forces coming in all consecutively to push for a new reality. So the 1 year of 2017 represented the sneak preview, the initial thrust of that. In 2018 will be the establishment of it. And it will include Jupiter and Scorpio stripping away, Saturn and Capricorn, the old authority, tradition, taking a stand, Chiron suggesting, okay, within all of this, but what constitutes our authentic self? So it's a little bit philosophical. What does authentic self-expression look like or mean in this day and age? Uranus in Taurus, time to lay the new foundation. And it's serious about it. It's like Taurus represents money, and Taurus and Venus, personal possessions, values, priorities, yes, but money. And so it's very economical. That's why the bull in economics, the bull market theme works well. It just so happens to work very well, because Bull, Taurus, banks, and money and economy. Stepping back just a tiny bit, just recently, I've been writing about this in my newsletter. Saturn Mercury conjunct the galactic center. It's a rare conjunction. Mercury was retrograde. Mercury retrograde has been described in Sagittarius as the lost soul. So it has reference at least to the principle of the lost soul. Saturn Mercury conjunction is very insight oriented. In Sagittarius, very seeking the higher truth. Mercury retrograde conjunct Saturn in Sagittarius conjunct the galactic center suggests a theme of the need to reclaim who and what we really are. We need to reclaim that we are souls. That's what I wrote. You see, what's happened in the world is the march of materialism has become strong. There's nothing wrong with materiality in terms of the good it gives. But if we convince ourselves that we're just material beings and we're not souls and we don't have a soul nature, if we convince ourselves of materialism, that is almost exactly what Star Wars is about. The dark force represents it's only the material, except ironically, the head honcho of the Vader dark force represents the force in the dark side. So it's still metaphysical. But the other side, the forces of light, represent, the Jedi mindset. The point I'm getting at with these metaphors, which the movies represent, is that the materialistic prowess has every almost desire to eliminate anything that it isn't. But it is what you would call the means, but it assumes a position of power because it's so technologically brilliant and powerful. So it, instead of understanding itself as the means, it interprets itself as the end. An example would be in another movie. I'm going to say movies because movies do a good job of representing concepts, right? The very idea of Terminator with Schwarzenegger years ago. Terminator was the machines decided we're taking over and you're a problem. So the machine is ever designed to be a means for the human ends, but the machine decides we're the end. You are the means. And you're, as a means, you become outdated. We need to annihilate you so we can move on. So this is a dangerous reality. Currently, by the way, another current thing, computers, they say AI, artificial intelligence, is moving so fast that it's now rewriting code, according to reports, that we can't change. Right now, AI, computers are writing code that humans can't A, keep up with, and B, can't stop. That's Uranus in Aries, by the way. That's so.
Yeah,
so
it's like a runaway train.
It's a very dangerous situation, we can say. Now, my position as an astrologer has been sort of two. I'm a life coach astrologer, and I work with people in a very realistic way, very much who are you, how are you, where are you, what's going on, and helping them to know how they can navigate through changes, what's happening in terms of the future probably. I try my best to avoid, blanket predictions. That kind of astrology is sort of more dated to a modern astrology, which is more support your free will, but understand that there's a larger force of destiny. Okay, there's that. So I do that. Now, also, it's hard for me not to also, in my nature, to assume something of the role of the prophet. And that's comes with the territory. Not every astrologer aspires to have a prophetic voice, but many do, because astrology offers insight of timelines way into the future. So it offers the opportunity, and there you go. So I wanted to do that gently. But my main thing over 25 years of doing astrology in the prophetic side was to say, what's really valuable about astrology is it represents that the universe is conscious, that we live in consciousness. It's, and we are souls incarnate. And I've been trying to say to people, we need to understand that science is good and they support the material, but materialism is science that wants to do away with any notion of soul, any notion of anything metaphysical, any notion of anything that might underestimate its power. And there's only one thing that can underestimate the power of technological might, and that's a soul concept. You see, because beyond, if the soul concept's not there, and suddenly life becomes meaningless, it just becomes purely physical, empirical, appetite-based, addiction-based, we lose our sense of who we are, why we're here. Why are we here? It goes into consumptions merely. We're just consuming machines, it's just, and live, have a good time, whoever has the most toys wins, and then you die, big deal, next, and the answer is no. We as souls incarnate in the earth plane or in the earth school learning, and we have various technologies which serve the means to the end of our learning. But what's been emerging with modern technology is the reverse. So see, that's the prophetic message. I'm certainly not alone saying it, but I want to say it sort of loudly now. So when in the past just weeks, when Chiron, Mercury retrograde, conjunct, a very insightful aspect all on its own, in Sagittarius, representing a very visionary mind, by the way. And if you add the galactic center of a very spiritual sort, a visionary spiritual consciousness in that, but Mercury retrograde represents the lost soul. So the interpretation, we have to gain insight on where we lost sight of the soul. We need to reclaim our soul nature. That's Chiron now in Aries, saying, what does authenticity really mean? It really means you speak from a soul, shall we say, call it speaking from your heart, speaking your truth. In its essence, authenticity represents more than an unglamorous ego. You see, like, we're not just talking about an unglamorous ego. Oh, that person's so authentic. They have an unglamorous ego. No. That's just an unglamorous ego. It's not. A soul consciousness thinks in a different way. It's a different paradigm. Okay, just hold that. I'll say no more for a moment for that, except to add that just a few days ago on the 18th of December, the new moon was conjunct the galactic center. So the first aspect had a life, then the new moon comes and sort of reinvigorates it. What's really significant is they're happening just prior to the new year and just prior to winter solstice. So the new moon and winter solstice and January 1st, those 3 dates, all three can be seen as indications of themes to unfold in the year to come. The strongest one is actually winter solstice today. That's the strong. Why is it the strongest? It's because it's the day of the sun beginning its return to longest hours of daylight. These are not arbitrary factors. Astrologically, they have psychospiritual significance. There's a symbolic aspect to them, and they're not easily, immediately, empirically measurable, because you have to think holistically. You have to think not in the physics department, you You have to think in the metaphysics department, to be perfectly frank. You have to understand it in a different mindset. And that's where there's confusion, because the march of materialism is very physics. And it was very big and by the way, I said the first 11 year I mentioned earlier, in only once, 1 year in the 20th century, the 1900s, 1901, was there an 11 year. Prior to that, there was only one in the 1800s. There was only one in the 1700s. So there was very few and far between. In the new millennium, they're every 9 years. We have so what's kind of exciting about it is that 11, once again, is the metaphysical number. So my interpretation of all this is basically this. The 1 year that 2017 was blasted us off into a new series of social and economic dynamics. The biggest one, most noticeably, and when we saw lots of natural disasters, which have been terrible, but that's not new. We saw a lot of antics in the presidency. That's new. And we saw, facing off between powers, reminding people that nuclear war is not a myth. It's a reality, and it's as close to us as we would never want. But it is, right? There it is, right there, just waiting for some megalomaniac to make some decision for us all that we're going to enter into this my destiny mindset. You follow that? But it's important to note that nuclear power is physics, materialism. It's okay, we talk about military and you can go on and describe it in different ways, but its reality as a machine, as a technology, represents that. So this is the era we live in. So 2018 is a year that's going to remind us even louder how important it is for us to reclaim our roots, who we are, where we come from. It's going to strip away, call them misdemeanors and crimes of various sorts, what would be inappropriate attitudes and behavior linked to the gender revolution. So the male-female balance of a power theme continues and will throughout the century. All of this, right until technically till 2104, but we'll see it, and it will have, on the graph, it'll have high spikes of success, and there'll be, counterattacks of sorts, shall we say, or lots of dynamics, and we're seeing them. So the current planetary motions play on that. They play on a larger backdrop. It's like a symphony, but you say, okay, a symphony, the current planetary activity, but what's behind it? What's the bigger reality? So these are some of them. We have the march of science and materialism and technology, which is really great on one hand, but it's really dangerous from the standpoint of war technology, but it's also dangerous in terms of other, like the materialistic attitude and philosophy taking over. If that occurs, and it's happening, quite frankly, you enter into a time of a dark age. It's like a dark age. Meaning means nothing. There's no meaning anymore. Like, for example, I'll tell you a couple quick more examples. In the study of astrology utilizes the factual scientific basis of astronomy. So, and it always has. Astronomy and astrology are brother and sister, or right and left hand. They work together. But the scientific mindset of astronomy is to refute anything that means something. It's not interested in that paradigm because its mindset is physics. Okay, it can go into quantum physics, which is close to metaphysics, but it stays in physics by and large. But the metaphysical model is looked upon with disdain. How dare you insult my intelligence by mentioning metaphysics? Metaphysics becomes the science of the soul. In its most, metaphysics is practiced and expressed and interpreted in various levels. There's, the little league, there's the juniors, and there's the big leagues, so to speak, keeping it simple. Okay, like elementary, high, and post-secondary schooling. Okay, so it's good to remember that. Just because a person says metaphysics doesn't mean they're operating at a high level. But at a highest level, metaphysics is the science of the spirit, the science of spirituality, the science of holism. So I say that to you because the metaphysical model is necessarily must be resurrected. It must be reclaimed. It must be reinterpreted if necessary. It must be given new consideration. So ironically, Saturn in Capricorn would traditionally be very, in this modern era, science. That's it. That would be science. But Saturn in Capricorn is tradition, and astrology is tradition. So in a metaphysical year, we might see more interest. Basically, it could be as basic as because people need and want more answers. They want hope. They want something that gives life meaning again, shall we say. This is not to say people are running around without meaning in their lives at all. It's not to say that. I'm talking at a large social global level with the, societies merging and migrations and this and that. That's the age of Aquarius. The human family is being born. We're breaking down the old borders as much as we can. We're creating cosmopolitan cities and countries, right? You see where I'm going with that? Yeah, that's pardon me?
Very exciting time.
Yeah, so the final bit here is just to step back. In this age of Aquarius, we're creating this global village, and it's really clashing of beliefs and understandings and cultures and languages and privileges, etc. So it's a chaotic time for that reason. At the root of any culture is language, but if you go deep in there, they have beliefs, they have convictions. Any culture, if you go in there, always celebrates the spirit, always celebrates the soul, always represents more than we realize, more than we see empirically, right? There's always the spiritual. But the modern thrust of the world, which the whole world's being pushed to embrace, is very scientific, very physics, very materialism, which is not bad as such. It's good because we have technology and it's good for us. It's only not good if it's without meaning, without soul, without purpose. We go, what? What are we here for? And what that does is it feeds the attitudes of the egos of those who think there's nothing to it at all. There's only power. That's the problem. Those who think it means nothing, what your belief, those are just fancy beliefs. You're just some flake who believes in the soul. What, are you kidding? It's all brain power or whatever. And then it becomes might is right and the one with the biggest guns wins. And nuclear power says you can't do that. This is the dilemma. We're in and I know that's not a news story, and it's a big picture story, and it puts 2018 into context. But all of those conjunctions to the galactic center established a part of the new wave that's coming in. Jupiter entered Scorpio, that's part of the new wave. Saturn entered its own sign, Capricorn, just 2 days ago on the 19th. That's a part of it. And we're entering into an 11-year 2018, which will include Chiron seeking authentic self-expression and Uranus saying, okay, that's fine, great, but I'm coming in with the bulldozers and we're establishing a new reality that started when Uranus entered Aries. What's that new reality? Well, quite frankly, a fair bit of it is a very technological mindset, a very, very technical, scientific mindset, which once again is good, but now the game is set, and that's the conversation that I think should occur. And the question of how much will it occur is yet to be seen, I must admit. But I want to add 2 more points. And I know I'm going long here, but I don't mean to get too much further. But I just want to look one little peek further down the road. Before 2018 is over, Jupiter will enter its own sign of Sagittarius. That's very significant. When a planet like Saturn entered Capricorn, its own sign is very significant. It represents its own new beginning. And it's true also, it represents a new beginning when it enters Aries. But Jupiter in Sagittarius, its own sign, will start in November of 2018. And that's a very philosophical position for Jupiter to be in. It's very belief driven. It's very like conviction driven. And I think what we're going to see when it does occur is the rise of religious conviction. Okay, which is good, but religion at worst is dogmatic. And if we get a father knows best, we can get Ayatollah Khomeini's rising like, weeds. But if we can bring in the essence of religion, which is spirituality, and not yield to dogmatic assertion and theology, but we go into spiritual science, we will have broken through what needs to occur. That's what I basically believe needs to occur, and that's what I think will occur. It's what needs to occur. Will it occur? I cannot say with undue certainty. Who can? It's not easy. We can try our best, but we can just say that's really what needs to occur. And one final thing is that the nodal axis, which changes every 18 months, will also change in November of 2018. I thought I'd mention that. It's part of what 2018 is about. And the North Node will leave Leo and enter Cancer. So that too represents security. So on a final note here, and I'm open to further discussion. I know you've done a great job. Thanks, I'm long-winded here, but when that happens, the urge for security will increase in the world. We're going to see more of a appeal to return to some traditional way, and it will last for a while. Like, it will be, okay, you're right, that things are moving fast. We need to slow things down. We need to manage the rate of change in society, because it moves too quickly, it gets out of control. But what it'll only be able to do is hold it back for a while. That's what I think is going to happen. It's going to be able to hold it back for a while, but it's going to be challenged to hold it back as long as it would like to. And what's really this is a bit down the road, but back in about, I think it's 2020, 21, I can't remember. We'll talk about this another time. Jupiter by then will have moved into Aquarius, and Saturn will enter Aquarius, and they'll conjunct in 2020. And that's a whole other discussion, but it's just a little bit further down the road beyond 2018. And when Jupiter and Uranus conjunct in Aquarius, it's going to be like a whole new big thing, like a very technological genius revolution. It's like the doors will be blown open on the whole age of Aquarius. It's almost like it's going to say, we've been warming up to the age of Aquarius, and here we go. The reason I mention this is simply that it puts 2018 into context. We see everything from the bigger picture, the age of Aquarius, this and the Uranus-Pluto conjunction, the gender revolution, and the global village emerging. And then we see in more current times these conjunctions with the galactic center, a spiritual need to, resurrect a metaphysical understanding, a spiritual science, if you like, is a better way of saying it, in the face of a lot of dynamic activity, Jupiter stripping away and, totally annihilating certain attitudes in a good sense. It's saying, you know what? The future generations will not be so casually, crossing the line, abusing their power. Saturn in Capricorn will establish a new level of authority, the old guard, etc. Chiron will come in and try and establish for about 4 or 5 years, what does it mean to be authentically who we are? Kind of sparking its own spiritual quest. Uranus all at the same time will come in and go, that's all great and fine, but the foundation, like we're bulldozing the ground now, so get out of the way. That describes
very turbulent times.
Yes, it's never congruent and tidy and simple and obvious. There's always lots going on. But in our world, with especially merging cultures and economies and beliefs and cultures, etc., it's more complicated, right? And then bring in the modern era with technology and nuclear powers and robotics, and well, we're talking, in a Star Wars kind of way. In terms of power, the only problem is it doesn't come with all the idyllic heroism as we see in movies. It comes with, includes other possible negatives, such as, well, it need not necessarily be negative. And this is the whole game of the human drama currently, is it's always challenging, and there's always dramas and accidents and weather and storms and natural disasters and everything going on, and there's skirmishes, and this is nothing new, and I don't think it's going to change too soon. But within it all, with all this changing social, economic, political, reality, moving quickly and challenging us to keep up, within this, as I keep saying, is this, sort of silver lining that's going to try to establish something more meaningful, something deeper, something that reminds us that there's more to life than just simple, here today, gone tomorrow, that's it, that's all, and all the implications of that.
What a great conversation to have on the winter solstice. And again, a new beginning, right?
Yep. Winter solstice, the natural new year, it is. And it's usually I'm usually a quiet person on the winter solstice, but it is apropos. And so thank you for giving me this opportunity to share these insights. And there was a lot to say, so I had to just belt it out there. And thank you for, just being there to be, more or less a sounding board. I look forward to future times where we can have more of a chit chat, maybe unfolding some of these things a bit more.
Yeah, do you want to talk a bit about that aspect of how we're going to move forward?
Yes. Well, I'm excited to announce, everybody listening, and what we're going to do, Tyson and I, is some astrological discussions weekly. So it's going to be less about horoscopes, not about each sign. We'll touch on that a little, but I'm going to bring more spotlight. I do that currently with my horoscope in the tip of the week, and that will continue, but it'll be more of a verbal elaboration of those points. And these will be short snippet, conversations ranging from as short as a dozen minutes to maybe, half an hour maximum. But more on the end of 12 to 15 minutes, just to say, here's an update for what's current and going on. And we'll do our best to not just speak to personality-based mindsets, but just to larger considerations, It's not to say we, as individuals on the playing field, don't matter. We do, certainly. But it's good also to remember the larger reality, just the bigger picture. So that's what we'll do. And yeah. And also,
Oh, sounds great. And how do people, tell people your website so people can get hold of you?
So my website now, I'm actually just on the eve of a new website being launched. The other one's quite dated, but there it is. It's sunstarastrology.com, and it has everything you need in terms of signing up for the newsletter. And that newsletter though anybody on that list will be redirected to and invited to sign up to the pages, the Tyson's Academy. Tyson has a Teaching Healing Academy, and I'll have a page on there, and it's going to promote various workshops, and there's going to be a lot of segments in there where you can go and learn more about astrology in general and what's going on, and courses coming up. So there's going to be a collaboration that we're going to do in 2018. So I'm looking forward to that. And one final note: at Christmas, this time of the year, I offer a special for readings, and it's either buy two of the same cost and get a third free, or buy one get the second half price. I only do this at Christmas, so it's available now, and I'll be sending this out in my next newsletter, which will be soon. As soon as I get the URL for this recording, I'm going to post my new newsletter, which will include insights on Saturn in Capricorn in written form, and a copy of this and the horoscope for 2018 for each sign. So that's something to look forward to. So sign up on my website, sunstarastrology.com. And also I'll be sending the sale notification, which ends on the 31st as well. So it's a good time because you can pay it forward and or give yourself and others gifts with that purchase. Say 1 hour readings and get the third free. Yeah. And you're welcome to gift them. You can gift them. You can give them as half-hour gifts if you like. You can give them in whatever form. You can keep them. You can do whatever you want with them. But it's usually in half-hour segments, half-hour, hour, 90 minutes, goes like that. Or if you buy one, you can get the second one half price. So it just offers you a series of options of how to, pay it forward, get the discount now, and or give them as gifts for Christmas and New Year's.
Best of the new year to you.
Thank you, you too. Yes, blessings to solstice blessings to everybody, and Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. All the best in 2018, and I look forward to seeing you all more in the future.
Bye for now.
Okay, bye-bye.
For quality online wellness products, courses, and services, visit our sponsors, thewellnessstore.ca and the Extraordinary Healing Arts Academy located at thewellnessacademy.ca. To stay in touch, visit us at thewellnessshow.ca. And until next time, be healthy, wealthy, and wise.